I just remember when I left there, it felt like there was a piece of me that went back. I felt more complete when I left than when I arrived. And I think it's because I had the courage to face something that I was so very scared of.
Well, welcome back to the True Man Podcast. You know, oftentimes on our journey, we hit rock bottom in our lives. And if you're willing to put in the work and focus on self-improvement, redemption and a great comeback story is available. Such is the story of today's guest, Kevin Palmieri. He is the CFO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 900 episodes. It's going to be a while before I catch you, but I'll get there. And he's got over 1 million people listening in more than 120 countries. Kevin is an avid studier of personal development. I'm going to let him explain what that means in just a minute. Kevin, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. You are the comeback coach. I am the never quit kid. So we are going to have a wonderful conversation today, I'm sure.
Yeah, love it. So Kevin, personal development and understanding, one's life, mental health is important for people to understand. So, they could stay on track and it really typically though starts with a pivot point in someone's life. Mm. So set this up a little, tell us about you and how everything got started and what leads you to your pivot point where you become this podcast king here.
I appreciate that. So just for context, I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I did not have a father in the picture. I did not meet my dad with the understanding that he was my father until I was 27 years old. And when all of my friends decided that they were going to go off to college after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to do that. So while all my friends were out partying, having the time of their lives, I was working at the town gas station, pumping gas. I was the lead person there. And from there, I ended up becoming a personal trainer and a truck driver and a forklift operator. And I was in construction and I did a bunch of different things. But I ended up getting this very unique job opportunity to do something called weatherization, where we would go into schools, banks, gymnasiums, police stations, fire stations, and we would make their buildings more energy efficient. That was our job. Since we worked on government and state contracts, I made anywhere from $50 to $110 an hour, which for somebody who didn't have a college degree, grew up broke, that is life-changing money. Life-changing money. Well, we'll get to that, Mike. It'll be very clear. So if you fast forward a couple of years, I'm 25 years old, and by all outside standards, I have the life of any man's dreams. I have a fast car. I'm in the best shape of my life. I just did a bodybuilding show, so I was in very, very, very good shape. My girlfriend was a model, high-paying job, new apartment, everything that you could ever want. But I was not super happy. I was not into self-improvement, and I did not understand myself. I was not aware of who I was as a human being. And one day my girlfriend came to me and she said, Kev, we lived on the East Coast. She said, I want to move across the country to California and I want to chase my dreams. And now, again, I am the self-improvement guy who wants to give belief to every human being. And I told her no. And I gave her a list of reasons. These are the reasons you should not chase your dreams.
Uh-oh.
Yep. A couple of weeks later, Mike, she came back and said, hey, this isn't going to work. I'm going to go do my thing and I'm going to leave you. And I obviously was devastated at the time. Best thing she ever did because she chased her dreams and that unlocked a lot of things in me. But when she left, Mike, that was my initial rock bottom. I had this big apartment that I had to pay for by myself. My bills just doubled. I'm questioning, am I broken? Am I going to be able to attract a partner? What's going on here? I don't understand what's going on. And that is when I started, quote unquote, self-improvement. I started with positive affirmations. That's my initial start because I didn't like who I was and I didn't like the way I was talking about myself to myself.
Yeah.
So every night before bed, I would lay in bed and I would say, I am handsome, I'm talented, I'm worthy, I'm intelligent. And this year I'm going to make the most money I've ever made in my entire life. The problem is I leaned on that last one because for all of my life, really, I expected external results to bring internal fulfillment. And
that's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think everybody says that money doesn't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves, right? You're like, well, maybe it will, maybe it will for me. And I was the same way. So that next year starts and I got a promotion. So I became a foreman at this company. The foreman is on the job from the day it starts till the day it ends. And there was a lot of jobs. So I lived in New Hampshire at that time. We worked in New Jersey. We worked in Connecticut. We worked in Delaware. We worked in Virginia. I spent the majority of the year on the road. We get to the end of the year. I'd been on the road for 10 months out of the 12. And when I say on the road, I don't mean one day a week. I mean 5 days a week, every single week, hotel to hotel, city to city, state to state. And it was brutal. I was up for 30 hours routinely, like on a weekly basis, but I was making money and that was my main intention. We got to the end of the year, Mike, I'm standing at my kitchen table and I open up my last pay stub of the year and I made six figures. I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. Same thing happened as when my girlfriend left. I realized that I put all of this emphasis into external results for internal fulfillment. And I missed again. Big swing, big miss. Almost overnight, I stopped caring about the job. I stopped caring about the money. And I started a podcast called the Hyper Conscious Podcast. For most of my life, I lived unconscious. What is the opposite of unconscious? Hyper conscious. And that is what I wanted to become. I wanted to understand why I was thinking the way I was thinking, why I was acting the way I was acting, why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and the results I was getting based on all those things. So I started interviewing my friends. We talked about deep stuff. One of my friends wanted to commit suicide at one point in his life. We talked about that, how I went to the hospital with him. And this passion project started to take away from my job. I would call out. I would leave work early. I just was not in it. I did not want to be there anymore. I was so sick of it. It was not aligned. I wanted to do my thing. I wanted to podcast for a living. It just seemed like it would be the best thing in the world. And it got to the point where I'd have to be in New Jersey, which was 6 hours away from where I lived, Monday at 7 a.m. I would go to bed Sunday at like 10 p.m. I'd sleep until 1 a.m. and then I'd get up and drive straight to the job site. I'd work an 8-hour day and then I'd go to the gym after. That's the point that it got to. And you said, why did I quit? This is why I quit. One day I was in New Jersey. It was probably 5:15, cold morning, and my alarm clock went off. I woke up, slid to the edge of the bed, and I'm lacing up my work boots, and my coworker is in the other bed in my room. And the best way to explain it, Mike, is there's 10 televisions on in my head. Every single one is on a different station. It's just noisy, overwhelming, stress.
Chaos.
And one of them says, Kev, I know you want to leave, but you're stuck here forever. Kev, you're never going to make the same amount of money you've made here. You don't even deserve the money you're making here. So good luck. What will your friends think? What will your family think? But the loudest one, the one that really stuck out the most was, do you really think you can be a successful podcaster? Ooh. And I didn't know how it was possible. Yeah. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it was possible. And in that moment, Mike, I felt that if I ended my life, I would take my problems with me. And that was my rock bottom basement. Nothing can get worse than this. I have to make some sort of change. I texted my friend who is the co-host, the co-founder, and the CEO of our company. And I said, hey man, I'm going through it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. He said, Kev, so much has changed for you over the last few years, but your environment hasn't. I think it's time to change your environment. And 3 or 4 months later, I left my job. Went from making $100,000 a year to zero. I was a broke entrepreneur for the next 3, and it was the best decision I ever made. It was the best decision I ever made to go all in on the thing that I needed when I was at my lowest point. And that is our goal. Our goal is it's heart driven, but no BS. I want to tell it like it is without ego. I don't want there to be ego. I want it to be heart driven because I care, not because I want you to think that I'm something special. And here we are 900 and something episodes later.
Yeah, no, great story. There's a lot to unpack in your story. And I'm just curious because so often when, so I'm going to circle back here a little bit. Please. So often when there is a lack of father presence in our life, when we're going through a developmental stage, it can lead to a lot of questions. Mm. And so, you said you didn't know your father until you were 27. Is that right?
Yep.
So how do you feel like not knowing your father, him just basically not being present, affected your start in life? as you grew into adulthood, because that's usually where it shows up.
Yeah.
Right. So how did that affect you?
I think that, I don't know. I always felt like there was a piece of me missing. I think that was probably the best. It becomes part of your identity. I mean, when you're in school and they're going around the room and they say, "Hey, what does your mom do? What does your dad do?" I remember they asked me that in like 4th grade. And I had no idea. I didn't even know what my dad's name was. I said, he's a construction worker. That's all I had. I didn't know. I have no idea what he does.
It was actually an accurate description.
It probably was. It probably was. But I think that it becomes part of your identity. Just like if you are conscious that you grew up with money. I mean, if you're young and you walk out of your door and you realize like these houses are huge. I live in a really nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
That becomes part of your identity. I grew up with money. Or if you were broke, I grew up without money. That became part of my identity. And I think, I mean, I told you, the never quit kid, that is still part of my identity. The underdog who is not supposed to be here, who was never supposed to make it here, who did not have the cards in his favor, but kept going. It became part of my identity, but it also created a lot of anger. It created a lot of anger in me. I wanted to fight. I wanted to be chased. I wanted to feel cared about. That was a lot of my feelings when I was younger, especially when I would, in my teens, when I would drink. It was very anger fueled and wanting attention, because I don't think I ever felt like I got attention.
Yeah. I mean, that's so huge. I mean, commonly, when we're young kids, we, and I'm talking, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old, we want to be seen. We want to be heard, and the question I heard asked recently was, does that really ever go away? And the answer to that is, I don't think it does, which is basically what you're describing. But what it does lead to, when you're not being seen and heard in the way that you want to, it usually comes out 9 times out of 10 in anger. And that sounds like that's exactly what happened to you, which can lead towards a lot of frustration and bad relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. It was never any, like, I think I'm happy. I'm blessed. I feel grateful that it didn't go worse than it did. I mean, yeah, I was angry, but I never got in trouble. I never got in trouble with the law or anything like that. So right. I think I handled it pretty well, but I always, if you're listening and you grew up without a father, and maybe this is my experience, all of my friends, their families tried to bring me in because I think they knew that I needed a positive male role model. So I had friends that I would go spend a weekend at their house, and that happened like pretty routinely. And that was impactful for me, having that positive male role model. But it was weird knowing it wasn't my own flesh. It wasn't my own blood. It's this weird thing. I appreciate it. I'm grateful for it, but nothing can ever really replace the thing that's missing.
How do you feel like those relationships help keep you going? I mean, you could probably reflect back on it now and see, hey, there's more to life. I can do better. I can, how do you feel like being exposed to those strong and loving family relationships help round you out?
I think it showed me what our true family was. Because my family, I'm blessed because my family's supportive, but we never had I don't want to say normal, but like we didn't really go on vacation. We didn't really go out to dinner. That wasn't the setup of our family. But I remember I had a very close family, and my best friend was like my brother. I spent all the time there, and his family would take me out to eat, and they would cook dinner, and we'd go ice fishing, and we'd go hunting. And it was like, oh, wow, this is a completely different life. It almost feels like you're living in a movie because you leave your reality and you go to somebody else's. Yeah. And it's very, I don't want to say triggering because it's a good thing, but it's very perspective shifting, where it's like, it's almost like I leave one world and I go into another, and then I go back into another world. And every family is kind of set up that way. It's even to this day, everybody has their own family dynamic, the way it works. It's like, it's a different world, every family you go into.
Do you remember thinking that at the time, or is that just kind of how you reflect back on it now?
I think I was not hyper conscious of that. I was somewhat conscious that what I could do at different people's houses was different. Like I always had to be somewhat quiet at mine because my mom worked overnights. Yeah. So she'd be sleeping all day. So I couldn't really have people over and like yell or scream or play music loud. But when we would go to one of my buddies' house, we could do whatever we wanted. We could play the music as loud as we want. We could play video games as loud as we want. We had fires. We had people over. So I didn't understand the depths of it. I think I only recognized like what it looked like and what it felt like.
So I'm going to make an assumption, and I could be wrong here.
Please.
Dangerous to do, for sure. So when you finally catch up to your dad, what happens?
There was no violence. I could promise that. No.
Yeah.
One day I was sitting in my recliner, and I didn't realize that Facebook had a feature at the time, I don't know if they still do, where if somebody's not friends with you and they message you, it goes to a separate folder. I didn't know that. So I was going through my Facebook messages one day.
I'm not sure I knew that.
Well, there you go. You might have some messages in there. I was going through that folder, and I saw this message, and you can only see like the first line. And it was from a name I'd never seen before. And the first line I saw was, "Hey, this is blank. This is your father's girlfriend." And I went, "Ooh, whoa. What is this?" And I opened it up, and it basically said, "Hey, this is your father's girlfriend. He wanted me to reach out and let you know how proud of you he is. He's been seeing what you're doing. And if you're open to it, he would love the opportunity to meet and grab lunch." And I literally took my phone, I threw it on the floor. I fell on the floor. I started crying, because it's easy to say you hate somebody. And this is the way I talked about my dad.
Yeah.
It's easy to say you hate somebody and you do not care if they're living, and you do not care if you ever see them until you have the opportunity to go see that person. And then reality strikes, and it's like, okay, where do I want to go with this? I texted one of my friends, and I said, honestly, I think I have to do this. I think this is an important piece for my growth. I think it's going to help me heal a lot of things. And I think I have to try to find forgiveness, empathy, understanding, whatever it is. And my friend said, "Do you want me to come?" And I said, "No, this is something I have to do alone." So we set up a little meeting. I drove down to this diner that was in between. It was between us and the center. And I remember when I got there, I'm thinking to myself, logistically, how am I even going to know when this person gets here? I don't even know what this person looks like.
It's a blind date.
Right. It was a very blind date.
Yeah.
So I go in, I sit in the booth, and I remember I saw a man walk by the window, and I said, "That's my dad." I don't know how I know. I don't know what he looks like, but that's definitely my dad. And he came in, he must have knew what I looked like from Facebook. He came in and sat down, and we just had a conversation, which is as awkward as you could expect based on 27 years of not knowing somebody.
Yeah.
He cried, and we had a good conversation, but for me, it was way more about healing myself and having the courage to go into that environment than anything else. I don't remember anything we talked about. I cannot remember any specifics. I just remember when I left there, it felt like there was a piece of me that went back. I felt more complete when I left than when I arrived. And I think it's because I had the courage to face something that I was so very scared of.
Yeah.
And the deeper part of it, Mike, is I think I left with empathy. When you're young, you think everybody has it figured out, and nobody has it figured out. Really? Right? They have it figured out to the level they did. So did my dad have it figured out? No. But he made a decision that might have been rash, and he might regret. He does regret. But I have to try to empathize, and this is my personal opinion. I have to try to empathize with what he was going through, because who knows what I would have done? Who knows what I would have done? I can guarantee that if I choose to have children with my partner, I guarantee that I will be a wonderful father. But I guarantee I'll be better because I didn't have one. Who knows if I didn't have that trauma, how I would have fathered? I don't know. I don't know. So I think it's an important thing to look at. And really, holding grudges, the person it really hurts is you at the end of the day.
That is so true.
It's challenge. I mean, it's easier for me to say now because I've gone through it.
Yeah.
But if you're out there and that's something, I have somebody in my life who is having the same thing. He has a stepfather, and I said, "You got to go see him. Got to go see him. You have to, because you're going to realize pretty quickly that so much has changed in your life and nothing has changed in his, and you'll understand. You'll be able to empathize. Oh, okay. I was just there in a blip of time in this person's life, and they didn't work super hard on themselves. So how could they pour into me in a positive manner?" I said, "You got to do it. It's going to heal parts of you don't even know are, I don't want to say broken, but are bruised, we'll say."
Well, that's what I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you. Now, this could be a father relationship. It could be a sibling relationship. It could be a mother relationship. It could be any relationship for that matter. There's just a lot of people who've gone through a lot of trauma in their life. And it sounds to me like your advice is heal from it, meet them, and see if there's, I guess, any redemption there. We all have a choice. I mean, they can choose not to, or they can choose. So is that kind of what I'm hearing? I mean, your experience is, hey, don't carry this around with you. Go see if you can heal from it. And there's a variety of ways you could heal from it, I guess.
Yeah. I would say as long as it's a scar, not an open wound still. For me, it was a scar. It's like there was a time where somebody said to me, I heard this through the grapevine, that they said your dad has cancer and he might not make it. And I was like, well, I don't care, whatever. Why are you even telling me this? I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. It was such a scar to me that it's not going to really trigger me to the level it would if I'm like, if you face a trauma and then you have to face the person who created that trauma shortly thereafter, I think that's a whole different thing. So I think it's personal and depends on, is it a scar or if it's an open wound? If it's an open wound, you have to let it scab over and scar, probably, in my experience. For me, it was a scar, so I knew I was ready to do it. But then I think the deeper question is, if the answer is yes, why is it a yes? If the answer is no, why is it a no? If you don't want to do it just because you're afraid and you don't have the courage, that's one thing. If you don't want to do it because you're afraid you'll get triggered and you'll revert to that version of you who, you were when this person was in your life, that's a whole nother discussion. So I think it's very personal, but the advice I would give is it has to be a scar. It can't be an open wound, because if it's an open wound, it's going to get infected. If it's a scar, it's just a slap on the arm.
Wow. I feel like we've just had some very sage advice dropped on us on the True Man podcast. That was pretty meaty right there. And, but congratulations, Kevin. Seriously.
Thank you.
I mean, you did a lot of work to get to that point in order to fully understand that. That's a big dang deal, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't take the time to discover that. I encourage it. It's why I'm life coaching. It's probably why you do the same thing, because some people just don't know what it takes, or they need help getting there, to fight through that stuff.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen, Mike, and obviously I didn't know this in the beginning, but when people talk about personal development, self-improvement, self-help, I think a lot of people miss half of the equation. When you're born, when you're younger, you are born and you are a seed and you are planted in soil that might be toxic. You have no control over the soil you are planted in. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years later, you're doing all this work and it doesn't seem like the stuff's landing. It's like, well, I read this book, but I don't feel like it's changing me that much. The problem is you have to go back. So what you're doing is you're taking nutritious soil from these books, these podcasts, YouTube videos, coaching sessions, and you're putting them on the soil that was toxic. You're putting them on, you're trying to get them to the seed, but they're not getting there. This is why self-reflection, this is why becoming aware, hyper-conscious, revisiting your past is so important. You've got to dig up or dig around the toxic soil so the nutritious stuff can get there. And I think that when people say personal development, they think, well, how many books have you read? How many coaches have you paid? How many online training courses? I care about how much you learn. Of course, it's so important. Yeah. My new question, my new frame, the thing that I like to ask is, how much have you unlearned? How much have you unlearned about your past, about your conditioning, about who you think you are or who you're supposed to be, so you can actually take those lessons and that knowledge and put it onto the identity of you as a human? And I think that's just a different level. And that's been my main focus, is how do I realize who I used to be, who I think I am, the beliefs I have that aren't mine, and then how do I pour this nutritious soil onto the seed of Kevin? And I think that's the holistic approach to self-improvement.
I would agree. As a man who grew up in Iowa, I know a little bit about agriculture, so I love the analogy of soil, because I come from that black, nutritious dirt where corn and soybeans call home. So you bring up a really good point, though, about unlearning. And I think the other side to that is missed is, in order to unlearn and to both learn, you have to take action. And so I could read 100 books and not take action on any of it. Now, I tend to believe that, you read enough of that stuff, there is, an undercurrent of activity going on. But in order to do that stuff, you got to take action on what you're reading and hearing and seeing. And that's what leads to the unlearned. That's my belief. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I have a bookshelf behind me. Full disclosure, I have read none of these books. I haven't read any of them. I listen to audiobooks. That's the way I like to process.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
But a lot of people buy the books and they don't buy the audiobooks. And then it's just like, well, I bought a book and I didn't do anything with it. It's very similar to my fiance and I. We have like a meal delivery service that we get.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get it. We forget about it. And then we have to throw out all the food because we're busy and things are going on. That none of that nutrition is actually getting to us, to our bodies. We're wasting our money and we're not using that as fuel in the way that we could. So I do believe that to a deep degree, action is the cure-all. And there's a couple reasons I believe that. Number one, if you lack confidence, you must take action to prove that you're better than you think you are. If you are somebody who is super confident, maybe on the arrogant side, you need to take action in order to be humbled. I believe that is the key to life. I remember that I used to do jujitsu and I used to train. I wanted to be a professional fighter. And there was always two types of people that would come in, new people, unreasonably humble. And they just say, look, I'm just here to learn, like teach me what I need to know. The other side, I know everything. Give me somebody who I can fight right now. I can tell you the experience of the people who said, give me somebody to fight right now went a lot worse than the people who came in and said, hey, I'm humble and I want to learn. Because they were humbled.
Yeah.
Right. So to a deeper degree, action is the cure-all because it shows you where you really are in the world. So many people, Mike, have said you can't make money with podcasting. That's dumb. You're going to leave your job behind. Exactly 0 of those people were podcasters. They've never done it. They've never been humbled enough to say, well, you know what? Maybe you can, or I've never tried it, so I can't really advise. Action is the cure-all. And to your point, so there's knowledge, which creates potential. And if you do not take action, that potential just stays there. You have to take action to make the circle connect.
I hate that word, potential.
Yeah.
I've just grown to hate it because it just, I get why people use it, but it just means you're sitting there in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't, nobody stays the same. I think that's an important distinction too, is like, it's not the way the universe is set up. You're either getting better or worse. I'm getting older during this interview, which in the grand scheme of things means I'm getting physically worse if I'm just sitting here not doing anything. So understand that people say stagnation. It's not stagnation, it's decline. You don't stagnate, you decline. Water can stagnate because it's water, but human beings, they decline or they improve, one or the other. And I think that's an important distinction that helps. It maybe will help the motivation is, look, if you can't just float, you can't just tread water because the water will catch up. You have to try to swim towards shore, whatever that shore is for you.
Yeah. It's funny. I choose not to think I'm getting older while we're on this podcast. Because I just don't like that thought. But
maybe you're getting younger. Who knows?
I don't know. It's sure. My mind says one thing. My body certainly says another. But that really is. It's about being present too, and so. I picked up. I was flying yesterday. I picked up a book at the airport, and I can't see it out of the corner of my eye, but basically what the guy was suggesting in his book was that, you can't take back yesterday, and it really, life requires present focus. And I just said present focus and it's already in the past. So we got to control what we control. And how do you're in this kind of space of helping people get to the next level. How do you approach being present in a world where that's kind of difficult because stuff's just flying at us?
Yeah. We have an interesting perspective on this. And I think we have a frame or a framework that we call the drive to 5. So you can either be insecure or arrogant, or it's 5, humble but confident, right? So think of like 5 is the sweet spot in everything. When it comes to, it's really hard because there's a lot of people who say
It is.
only focus on the future. It's like, well, no, you can't really do that. Only don't focus on the past. Don't even think about the past. Well, you can't really do that. Only live in the present. You can't really, because if you're only living in the present, you're not reflecting on your past and setting up for your future. If you're living in the future, you're not enjoying the moment and you're not thinking about the past. I think it has to be split. I think you have to live in the present through the experiences you've had in the past, designing a future that you're trying to get. And I think if you can balance those, now this is where things get it can get a little cloudy, I think for a long time, we were in a hyper work, grind, don't sleep future, right? That's future paced.
Yeah.
Then I think we jumped over to a more only do what feels right in the moment. Make sure you're aligned. I agree with that. Make sure you're aligned, but only do what's right in the moment. And everything's going to work out the way you want it to, as long as you're in the moment. I don't agree with that. I think that's like an overly spiritual side where it's like, well, just kind of be and everything's going to work out. I think it's in the middle. I think the middle is you have to reflect on your past and understand why you're getting the results you're getting today. But you got to know what island you're paddling towards. You got to know. You got to know. So being present to me means being present in moments. During this interview, my phone is flipped over. It's just me and you. You're on the big screen behind the camera.
Yep.
After this, I will go be present in the next thing I'm supposed to do. And then the next thing and the next thing. But all of those things are designed for the future based on who I used to be in the past. And I think that's what I would say. Does it make any sense? I don't know, but that is very much what we feel.
No, listen, I love your explanation because here's the thing. Like you said, your phone. Now I'm using my phone, truth be told, behind the microphone to keep track of time. That's the only reason it's on. But what's interesting is how these doggone little things have affected our life. And I talk with people all the time because in this kind of world that I've fallen into recently, whether it's podcasting or just some of the networking and mastermind groups that I'm a part of, you could be sitting right next to the very person that could change your life, literally at any one moment at time. But if your head is buried in your phone, you will never know that.
Yeah.
And we walk around now addicted to our phones, potentially missing opportunities to have our lives changed. Yep. Or meet somebody, that could be one of the most incredible people that you ever meet in your life. And to me, that's why being present is so important, because you don't know what's in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and it kind of goes against it, but it's almost deliberate presence. You're doing it with intention. My co-host, Alan, he's my best friend and everything, really, business partner, all that happy jazz. But him and I went to a speech one time. Do you know who David Meltzer is?
I don't believe I do.
He's big in the self-improvement space. He's a very successful podcaster, one of the top business shows in the world. We went to see him speak in New Jersey. We drove like 6 hours and we missed him. He ended up speaking early in the day and we completely missed his speech. But we got invited to the Q&A after. Okay. So we went up to somebody and said, "Hey, is Dave speaking?" And they said, "Oh, we already spoke." And we said, "Oh no, we missed it." The lady who put the event on literally brought us over to Dave, who was in the middle of a private speaking thing. He sat us down and said, "Here you go. You can meet Dave and just ask questions." We were there. We sat in front of Dave and everybody else for like 2 hours. And it was deliberate presence, deliberate of the reason we're being present in this moment is for a greater reason than right now. We're going to ask questions and we're going to get to know Dave and we're going to learn things, but who knows what might happen in the future if we're present now. And Dave ended up mentoring us for 3 years, which was a very big thing for us.
Yeah.
But it's only because of the deliberate presence that we had and we put in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even add to that. I think you're right. The word, I mean, listen, the word deliberate and presence, they kind of go together in this world where there's just so many distractions, so many things that can take you off track. So let's have some fun.
Please.
Yeah. You're a fellow podcaster. Let's talk about this whole podcast world you've gotten involved in. And man, if people only knew, it's just so much fun to be a part of. So you were telling early on about your story and getting into podcasting. You know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get consistent, I found. But once you get there, it becomes such a great habit. So talk more about your podcasting experience as somebody who's done darn near 1,000 shows. How has this helped to transform your life, if that's a fair way to put it?
Oh man, it's a perfect way. My life is completely different than it was when I started this. I mean, we have a 16-person team. We have a global business. You know, we're on track in the next few years to make millions and millions of dollars and help millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
It really, I don't know if I could do it justice if I explained how much it transformed my life, but so I believe that fulfillment, I think Tony Robbins is the one who originated this, but growth and contribution. Many humans don't feel that they have growth in terms of who they are as a person and their environment is growing. In contribution, contributing to something greater than themselves. I get to do that every day, which is just wonderful. It's wonderful that I get to hop on this microphone and then like, oh, that's me clocking in kind of. Yeah. So from that aspect, it's been amazing. What I will say is it's really helped my confidence. So I might sit here now and seem like you might say, oh my God, he's so confident. Not true. I've just done this 1,100 and something times between being on our show and other shows. I just have the reps. I just have a lot of reps in front of this microphone, where at the beginning, I remember having the same thoughts as everybody else. What am I going to say? I still have those thoughts. What if I say something wrong? Happens all the time. It's par for the course. Yeah. It's helped me tremendously with confidence because you get to look at unique moments in time. Not many people have the opportunity to take a look back 3 years to what they were thinking around Thanksgiving. We did an episode on it. So when you look back, you realize, oh my God, I can't believe, I used to say like so much. I don't say that anymore. That's awesome. I used to say, I used to say, but, or ain't, whatever it is. I used to say whatever. It really helps you understand in a blip of time where you were, and it gives you context to how far you've come. I always say this to people. We have a group coaching program. I always say this. I want you to take a video of yourself and I want you to talk about what's going on in your life right now. How do you feel? Are you confident? Are you fulfilled? Are you crushing it? Are you excited? Now I want you to revisit that in a year and see what's up, and then do it again and then revisit it in a year. We have so many opportunities to benchmark progress and context. A lot of other people don't. I honestly think that's the biggest thing. I'll have nights, Mike, where I had one the other night where it's just a long day, like a 15, 16, 17-hour day. And I'll be sitting on the couch, I'll like eat dinner, and I'll just take a couple minutes just to unwind, and I'll throw on YouTube and I'll watch one of our old episodes when we were in Alan's mother's basement. When we were in his mom's basement trying to figure all this out. And it's like that right there is the ultimate context. That is the ultimate perspective of, you know what? It might not feel like it in the minutes and moments like you're making progress, but if you look, it's wild how much has changed in the last 5 years. And I think human beings, the law of familiarity, we lose sight of that. So podcasting helps you not lose sight of how far you've come. And it gives you an opportunity to continue going, which is the best thing in the world. And it's so easy to start now. It's so easy to start. Get a microphone and start talking. You won't be good, but that's okay. Nobody's good at the beginning.
I love your answer. I kind of felt like I was looking in the mirror there a little bit, especially on the confidence thing, because truth be known, Paul Bailey and I that started the podcast, he started as my co-host, and our first episode was, in order to make room, I had to set up in my kids' playroom, and it took some liquid courage for us to hit the play button that night, and I'll never forget it. And man, has it changed. I probably, like you, can't hit the go button fast enough these days, because it's just, I find that it's such a great opportunity for me to be curious, to not only meet people, but introduce these people to another world of people that you might not have had the opportunity to touch. And I love being curious, and I love hearing from guests, and I never know, kind of like you never know, who is it going to impact? How am I going to touch the world? And I'm so hyper focused right now on my legacy and helping people, reach their full potential, that, man, I just can't spread the message fast enough.
I do.
I know you feel the same way about it.
That's why I would bet on somebody like you, Mike. I was on a show recently. We got to the end, and people are always a little bit different behind the scenes. When the camera shuts off, that's when you tell how people really are. And this person said, "So what can we do? What can we do together?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I'd love to collaborate." And I was like, "No, we don't collaborate. I'm here to add value. I'm here to impact. I'm not here to network. That's not what I'm here for."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Honestly, man, I don't really even care about the show or the listeners. Like, I just use this to make deals with people." And I said, "Well, you're barking up the wrong tree, because the reason I do this is because I have to, not from a financial or a job. I have to from my heart. Like, I will die before I stop doing this. And I just will. I traded everything for this. You think I'm going to, no, it's not. That's not the way we do business. That's not why we're doing this." So to your point of, I have to help people. I have to have that conversation. Who knows who I'm helping? I have to impact. That's the best way to start anything. And a podcast is a business. That's the best way to start a business, is with what is the purpose? What is the service that you're intending on having? That's the best way in the world. So I appreciate that about you.
Yeah. Well, behind the scenes look of a podcast, when you're going to laugh when I say this out loud. When you hit the pause button, we're recording on Zoom right now. That way we capture voice and video. It's awesome. When you hit the pause button after we get done recording this podcast, oh my gosh, I keep saying to people, there's got to be another way to re-record that. The amount of information and conversation that happens typically after a podcast is done is amazing.
It's true.
I absolutely love the after podcast. And why is that? What is there a way? We got to figure this out. We would be technology geniuses if we could figure out a way to hit that record button again. But
just let it run. You just let it run.
Well, I know, but it's not the same thing.
I know. Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah. There are ways to do it. Definitely. Like, there are ways, but it's probably a pain. Like, you could just screen cap the whole thing and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But that's technology that it might overcomplicate things.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, speaking of which, we probably better wrap this up. But listen, Kevin, you've been a great guest. I want, please tell everybody how and of course we'll put this in the show notes, but Kevin, tell everybody how they can find you if they want to learn more about you.
Yeah. So the best place to reach out to me is on Instagram. I am at Never Quit Kid. I will, if you follow me, send me a video, send me a message, whatever, I'll get back to you. I promise. And then our podcast is Next Level University, 7 episodes a week, holistic self-improvement for dream chasers, heart driven, but no BS. We want to tell it like it is, but we want to do it with as little ego or arrogance as humanly possible. So that is our brand, and that is what we're playing for. And we're trying to put self-improvement in the pocket of every human being on the planet for free every single day. That's our goal.
There you go. Kevin, thanks for being on. Folks, if you want to be a dream chaser, get a hold of Kevin and listen to their podcast. So I'm about to hit the pause button, and I bet our conversation is good, but unfortunately you won't be able to hear it. See you later.
Thanks, Mike.